Hello, everybody. My name is Andy Arenson. I am the lead technical administrator for Indiana University REDCap. And I am presenting today with Isaac Janson, who is sitting right here. You'll get to see him in a couple of creative uses from now. And he is from the Indiana Hemophilia and Thrombosis Center. And I sure hope I pronounced this correctly. And we are going to present to you some creative uses. Now, with the exception of one of these that is actually Isaac's, these come from the annual REDCap conference for administrators, and they were presented last year in Seattle. And my aim here, our aim here, is not necessarily to teach you exactly how to do each one of these, but to excite you and your creative juices and your ability to do your own innovation, because there's a lot of different things you can do in REDCap, and when you start throwing them together and creating combinations, you might be surprised at what's possible. So what is a creative use? Now, that may seem obvious to you, but in the world of REDCap, there's also these external modules. You'll hear more about them later. And what I want to say is that a creative use is something that you can do. It does not require you to get somebody to install some extra package or for you to write your own code, right? That is what we mean. Okay, so we have 6 to share with you. I'm going to do 2, hand it over to Isaac to do 3 more, and then come back with 1. And all right. Rob's coming up here because they're coming in now. Yeah. All right. So for this first one, for those who may not be aware, one of the types of fields in REDCap is the file upload field. And if you have a file upload field, right, and you create a report in the upper right here, you can, oh, great, you can see my mouse. If you put that file upload field into your report, what people get is the ability to download that file, which may be what you want. But what if you want to show a picture that you uploaded? Well, this use is about achieving that, right? And the basic idea is that with a normal file upload field, like you have in the upper right here, that gives you your ability to upload the file. If you add a second field here, and you use the action tag set value, and you put into the set value parameter a piped value, right, which is your upload field with the inline attribute, then the value of that second field becomes an HTML element, a web element that will actually display that uploaded file. That's it. That's the whole creative use. One little extra field, and you've got it. Couple of things to note if you're doing this is that the set value action tag only fires at the beginning of an instrument being loaded, so you may have to put your field onto a second form, or if you're using a survey, into a second section of a multi-page survey, or train people that they're going to have to reload that page, that sort of thing. Okay, what if you actually want your images to all be the same size? Well, now we have the bonus tip here, which is you can have a third field which uses the calc text action tag and this replace text. Oh, where's my thing? This ability to replace text, and you're going to replace that image tag with an image width equals 200 or height, whatever you want to do to your display. Okay, now I just threw at you action tags, multi-pages, calc text, and you may not know how to do all of those things, but again, the idea is to get the sense that there's lots of different things you can do with these creative uses. And we're not taking questions here because I'm going to try to move fast and go through a lot of different possibilities. But please come to us later. You'll have an opportunity to see these presentations, to get these slides. And we want to help you do this. We want to see what you uncover when you start doing your own innovations. Okay, the second one. This is actually 4 creative uses in one, because it's going to be solving the same problems in 4 progressively more interesting, or at least more functional ways. And the general idea is that you have one field, which is a set of checkboxes, and you want your participant to choose which of those they're interested in. Oh, these are the 3 I care about, and then rank them as first, second, and third, okay? So the basic way that this is handled is you've got your checkboxes at the top, and then you have a field which is a matrix field at the bottom, which has been configured to do ranking. And this is a normal, regular thing that can be done, the ranking that is. and you'll see that there's two columns here. I keep pointing at the screen. That's not going to help you. There's two columns here, right? Most important and second most important. And when people use this, they can only click in each column. Okay. So the question becomes, if somebody chooses pillow, blanket, and darkness, but not temperature and quiet, how do they see just those three options when they're ranking? Right. So we're going to use branching logic to only display the fields that have been chosen that are of interest. And here's a little movie, if you will, of this happening. And as you can see, as each item is clicked on, the branching logic has that item in the matrix field show up. Right? Just showing you the same thing a couple times here. All right, so that's one way to do it. But what if you want your matrix field options to show up embedded or interleaved in your checkbox? With this one, we're going to use field embedding. For those of you who haven't seen field embedding before, it's this not semicolon, not parentheses, squiggly brackets. Yes, that's the official term. It's the squiggly bracket, and it allows you to put one field in a different place in your instrument. Okay, so if we look at that, then as the options are clicked on, you see them show up interleaved. That's kind of nice. It's maybe a little bit easier. Maybe it looks nice. Okay, so for the third option, the question becomes, well, what if we want to do more than three? What if we want to give people no matter how many of the original 6 checkboxes, that they can rank all of them, but they don't get some sort of weird situation where there's a 5th ranking, but they only chose 4. So that's what this creative use is about. And for this, we're going to use the @if and @hide choice action tags. And those show up, and you get the same set of action tags that have to be put into each of your 6 rows in the matrix field. And what this is saying is, we've got this extra field called checksum, I forgot to mention this, which is going to do a calculation that determines how many checkboxes there are. And then based on how many checkboxes have actually been checked, then we're going to decide whether or not to hide or not hide the various columns from the matrix field. And it looks like this. As people check them, the calculation is done. And then just like in the previous example where I said you'd have to do this on 2 different forms, the reason you're going to next page here is because the @if action tag is not going to fire dynamically on your page. You need to go to a new page to do it. So in this example, you could see that only 4 of the columns are available because only 4 of the options have been chosen. All right. Finally, what if you want to do all that same stuff, okay? But you don't want those extra blank rows out there, okay? The person who gave us this use case last year is Courtney. Courtney is a wonderful friend, and they are a huge fan of CalcText, and this is literally their body that they have given over to CalcText. Okay, so in this case, we're going to get rid of those extra columns by, instead of hard coding the name of the columns in the matrix field, we're going to use these calculated texts to set the name of the column. And if we don't need the column, to set the name of the column to just be a couple extra empty spaces. And then it doesn't end up showing. This is the calculation, which is used to do that. And you can see that the name of the column is actually a piped value rather than hard-coded. So first choice is always there, but second and third choice are calculated. And what that looks like, if you choose just one item, then you go next, then you can see you've only got one first choice, and all of the other labels are also missing. I just like watching this, so we'll let it run. So you can see what it looks like for the first, the second, and the third choice. All right, with that, I am going to hand it over to Isaac, and we're going to very carefully make sure that we don't turn our volumes on at the same time. So I'm going to turn mine off.
Hello, everyone. Really appreciate the invite to share some creative uses with you. I think real quick before I jump into the creative use, if I have just a moment for your attention, it's really, and Stephanie highlighted this earlier when she talked about REDCap and how collaborative it is. I think that this highlights the fact that in my 7 or 8 years experience in REDCap, there's so many different collaborations with Andy, with other places. Stephanie highlighted that her experience, and that's one of the things I love about REDCap, along with how it can be used in so many different creative ways, which obviously we're talking about now. But that's really why, not the only reasons why, but two of the huge reasons, the collaborative nature and the creative uses for REDCap, why I really love REDCap. So without further ado, let me talk to you about something that I came up with an idea. There was a post in REDCap community, and if you've ever had an event or a course registration, something like that, where you want to be able to say, send out some kind of calendar invite so people remember to actually show up to your event. But you don't necessarily want to do that manually. See, the nice thing about REDCap, you can have people enter their data and register for something, and you can actually then send a calendar invite to them via email, and they can then have it in their calendar very easily. So the way to do that is to use the file repository. And we'll have a couple key elements. As you might guess, you probably need a calendar invite file. You need to have access to public file repository links enabled. And as Andy highlighted, you might be dedicated enough to get a calc text tattoo, but at least you need, for this use case, you need to use calc text as well. So let me go on to the calendar file is, whatever, if you're using Outlook or Google or whatever other calendar that you commonly use and you're creating your events. You go there, you save your ICS file, and you need that for 1 event, 10 events, however many you need for whatever your project is. And you save those, and then you take that to REDCap, and in your project, in your file repository, you can upload those there. And as I mentioned earlier, you want to make sure that you have the ability to share, and that key, let me use this mouse here, you can see it highlighted in the red, but you want to use that share button. Because that gives you a link to that file that you've then uploaded into REDCap. So from there, let me just kind of show you an email that could be sent out to someone who registered for an event or for a course. And this is very simple and generic. So this is kind of the final end product that someone would get in their email after they've registered. And here it is, a clickable link that they can download that file and help them remember to attend whatever they just signed up for. So behind the scenes, when you're setting up your email alert, you can have, again, multiple courses or registration files that then show up in the email if that's your use case. So it can be very robust. At the same time, sometimes you may want to separate that into multiple email alerts. It just depends on what you're doing. But it's very nice to have only one email alert that you have to ever modify. So if you can do it in one, that's usually the way to go, in my opinion. So in order to set up that easy clickable link in that email, here's where calc text comes in. You have, if someone has checked the first course, you want to take that file repository shareable link and put that in that calc text area there. And then from there, you can, to make it really cool and neat and streamlined in that email, you have another calc text field where so again, some of these details won't go through all of it, but it makes it very smooth and efficient to pipe that in there. And make it clickable. And if someone doesn't have that course selected, then it'll just be blank. So that way you don't have a lot of extra wasted space. All right, so I think that's it for that use case. And so now we have another one where this credit goes to Fred Dowd at University of Washington. And this is kind of where in some cases you want to see what's changed. So, in the whole Jerry Maguire, Cuba Gooding Jr., show me the changes kind of feeling here. This, using set value, calc text, and alerts and notifications, you can create a field level change log. And so that's, we have a project, a lot of people changing data or in different forms, et cetera, and you want to send that kind of update to whoever the project manager or people who are responsible to see that. So we can do that, and I'll show you quickly how to do so. So here's the kind of, again, end product. Here's the email that could go out to whoever is managing the project, excuse me. And here, 2 fields have been changed: Associate Director 2, Clinical Core Lead 1. And there's a nice little feature here that has another link that takes you to REDCap so you can actually view those changes. And we'll talk about that a little bit here at the end about using the history icon in case you're not familiar with that feature. So as you might guess, you need to start with a field generically called field 1 here. And we want to then look at and use the set value action tag. And so Andy talked about this in the previous use case. Some of the features in REDCap, they load immediately once you open the page. And this set value is similar. It loads immediately. So it takes the original value of field 1 and has that in field 1 comparison. And so since someone goes in and changes the original field, then there's obviously a difference. And so we want to compare that difference. And we look at that using, again, calc text. And we can then evaluate whether or not there is a change and pipe out some text and generically field 1 has changed here. And that then would show up in the email that I showed you earlier. And we would set up the email alert. So let me show you that quickly. So there's one key feature here. Some of these settings can be changed to your needs, but the one that you really want to make sure to have is in step 2 in your email alert, where you want to make sure that anytime data is saved with new or modified data, that it triggers an alert. Otherwise, you're never going to get that update of any data change. And so here is a kind of video snapshot of behind the scenes of, again, a ton of fields in this particular project that you could have in that email. And only the ones that do actually change when data is changed will show up in that email alert. Oh yeah, this last little piece about this creative use, again, it has that link to the record in REDCap that you can go to see what actual, see the changes in the fields. And that little H icon shows the history, and you can see when and where and what was changed. So that can really help someone see that quickly. And so that this kind of creative use does that. So the last creative use that I want to talk about is something using date diff. Date diff, and in this little picture here, I don't know about you, but 9.72 hours, it's usually not all that friendly and helpful. Like what is 0.72 hours? So Dan Foley at Mass General Brigham, credit to him for this. He's using calc text and a few other features to help make this more readable. And so there's a few other features, round, absolute, concat, those kind of things help with this as well. And you can imagine there's certain data points, if you're ever doing gestational age, that's usually weeks and days, or if, again, back to appointments or whatever, you can see, hey, appointment coming up in 5 days, or excuse me, 3 weeks and 5 days. That's usually kind of how you see. You don't want to see 3.2 weeks in when you're looking through and seeing how soon that may happen. So this QR code is here. It'll also be on the next slide in case you want to look at this in real time or later. But again, just to highlight, when date diff is used, you see a decimal place, 1.42 hours here. Whereas if you use Dan Foley's creative use, you can see that in a nice 1 hour and 25 minutes. So it's very, very helpful. So in order to make it more readable and usable, let me kind of walk you through some of the basics. So just to highlight, because when I show some of this, there is going to be a lot of pieces to this calculation, this calc text calculation. I don't want to get lost in some of the nuance. It's to break it down, it's really calc text with an if statement. That's as simple as it is. And so there's a few more features within that to make it all work. And I'll talk through how you can simplify this particular one if you wanted to. You have, to start off, you have the evaluating date time 2 versus date time 1. And we're looking to see, is that in the future or in the past? And that's what this if statement is basically doing. And then, hold on here, there we go. So that's pretty simple and straightforward. And then if it is, we can do some math trickery inside there with another if statement and concatenation and rounding. And what we also look here is, in some cases, we may have a situation where data is entered within an hour. And so we may only want to show 45 minutes. We don't want to show hours and minutes. And so that's why this particular display that Dan has set up is a little bit more on the advanced, complicated side. Maybe you do want to show just 0 hours and 45 minutes, and that's no problem. So that's something you can simplify in the future. But this is doing something where it really makes it show it will only show minutes if there's no hours to display. So that's why, again, you're doing another if statement to check to see if full hours actually exist. And then you generate the hours and minutes as needed. And then the second part of this is very similar to the first. It's just looking for if date time 2, again, is before or after, finishing up that last part of that initial if statement. And there's a few slightly different tricks with the math side of things to make it all work, but it's essentially the same, checking to see if they're full hours. and generating hours and minutes. So I'll just wrap it up by saying that you can, again, modify this to do other use cases where you have days, months, or years as other units of measure to make it easily to read. And like I said on the last slide, there you could do this more simply if you don't need to check to see if something is positive or negative, or if you can just display hours and minutes without having, if you could display either one. So simple could be better, but again, depending on the use case. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Andy.
Test. Yeah. Oh, thumbs up. I like it. Okay, the first of at least two apologies I'm going to give you is I told you there's no programming involved. And while technically true, some of that looked a lot like programming to me. I don't know about you guys. Okay. Can I get a time check? How many minutes do I have? I have 5 minutes. Thank you. All right. Use case number 6. Now, with this one, we've got a group in Australia. They've got a group of people who don't even have REDCap accounts, who are coming together to jointly create a data management plan. And so their conception about how they're going to handle this so that everybody can see this document that they're creating is that they created a REDCap project to do it. Now, it's not entirely clear to me why this is better than a Microsoft Word document, but some of the things they do in it seem pretty cool. So I thought it'd be fun to show with you. All right. What this mostly hinges on is something that we've actually seen already, which is the ability to use the set value to bring in the previous version of a value that has existed in a field. So what you're looking at here is the top of the survey form that they use, which is on the left here. And then on the right side is just lower down. It's actually a much longer form. And there's a typo up here in the project title, and that is mildly relevant. And then you'll note that this is listed as version 1 of this document. So the idea is that the first person who's created this document can come in and enter all of these values. And then the next person who needs to edit it will be able to take this version, see what it all looks like, and then make their own edits to continue. Okay, so we're showing here that the way we got the project name and the version is that we piped in values from these two fields. The project name's really obvious. That's where they typed in the project. But the version calculation field here, where we determine what the version is, there's an interesting subtlety here, which is that for the main way we're getting the version, right, is that we have an instrument that is a repeating field. And when in REDCap, when you have an instrument that repeats, every repeat of that instrument is given its own instance number. And this smart variable, current instance, can be piped in, and it will have, oh, this is instance 1, this is instance 2, instance 3, forever. As an aside, you'll notice there's an extra if statement here where we check to see if the current instance is 1, set it to 1. I actually think this is a typo in the slide. And what it should be saying is if current instance equals empty, then we set this to 1. My apologies for not catching that before I got this into the presentation here. There's an oddity in REDCap where the current instance doesn't get a value until you're on your second instance. That's a little aside of what's going on with that calculation. Okay, so once you have finished this survey, this survey has been configured, since it is a repeating survey, that there's a button at the end of it that you can create the next instance of that survey. And the survey queue has been configured. And that is why at the bottom here, it's showing you, oh, we've now completed one instance of this. And if you click either this create a new version button that comes at the end of the survey, or the create a new version that comes at the end of the survey queue, you come back to your survey and you can see you're now on version 2. And in this case, you have an opportunity to fix the typo in the name. How do we get the previous values? That is the, oh, I said set value before, my apologies. We're using the default action tag here, which is slightly different than set value. The difference between default and set value is that default will bring the value up as long as you have not had a value in that field in that instance before, whereas set value always changes it. So me saying set value was just wrong before, my apologies for that confusion. I think it's also interesting to note the use of the placeholder action tag here, which is what's putting this grayed out text in this box that doesn't have any user data in it. Give people an idea of what kind of values should be going there. I think that's the end. Yes, we're just pointing out the same at default action tag here, which is using the previous instance smart variable. Now, I said at the beginning of this that the use case that we're doing is a group of people who are coming together to edit a document, and all the parts of their document are the fields in this project. But you might be able to imagine lots of instances, lots of situations where you want previous instance. The one that comes to mind for me is, what are your current medications? Oh, you want to be able to put that in every time you come in for a visit? Well, maybe you want a repeating instance where you use previous instance to pull that information over. Okay, is that pretty much the same things you've seen already, except to note here that because you're using the survey queue, people can go back and see all of the versions of the document they have been in. How many minutes do I have left, Rob? Okay, so here's my second apology. We don't have time for questions. I really am sorry about that, but I am going to sneak in just one more real quickly. Now, I'm keeping you from lunch. So what I want to say about this one is that our friend Ashley Lewis, who's also, well, she's now at Seattle Children's. I had lunch with her before the last REDCap conference, and she tried to explain this to me while we were eating. And it took me about 20 minutes to understand what she was trying to do, much less how she did it. So I am definitely not going to explain everything that's going on here, but it is the wackiest creative use I have ever seen. And I think that you all are going to enjoy it. So here's a movie. And while it's going, I'm going to try to explain what you're seeing here. This is a situation where they wanted to be able to hand out gift cards to participants at multiple time points, okay? And the way they wanted to do this was to use the REDCap randomization module. Raise your hand if you've ever used REDCap randomization. Right, only a smattering of you even know what I'm talking about. My apologies. That's the fourth. And okay, so one of the problems with the randomization module, as cool as it is for being able to allow you to pick out of this randomization table and randomize your participants, you can only use it once per project. And for this use case, they needed it multiple times per project. So what did Ashley do? She created a second project that does all the randomization and then figured out a way to show the second project in the first project. So what you're seeing here is one project at the top, which is PID 2248. And as she's going through this process, you'll see that the second project shows up as a field in the first project. And then there's a bunch of things she does to get the data transferred back and forth between the two. So with that dangerous knowledge, please think of all the fun things you can do. That is it for my presentation. There are details here about how to do this, and if you want to know how it works, we'll find some way to try to explain. Thank you very much.
Andy and Isaac, thank you.